On a barren, desolate planet, humanity stood at the edge of extinction. The sky above was thick with the looming presence of alien ships. Their sleek, metallic bodies hovered silently, casting shadows over the ragged human outpost below. The humans, scattered in their defense positions, gripped their crude weapons tightly. But everyone knew, no matter how hard they fought, they couldn't win. The alien race was superior. Their technology was far beyond anything the humans could dream of. Weapons that could disintegrate entire buildings with a single shot, ships that could travel across the stars, and strength that made human soldiers seem like children playing with toys. Above them, the aliens watched. Their leader, a towering figure with glowing red eyes, looked down at the humans with disdain. His voice, cold and metallic, echoed through the communication system. Alien leader, look at them, pathetic creatures. They still think they stand a chance. Their weapons are nothing but shiny rocks. The rest of the aliens chuckled. They were all too familiar with human weakness. For centuries, they had dominated, enslaving lesser civilizations, crushing resistance with ease. Humans had no place in this galaxy. At least, that's what they believed. The humans, however, stood firm. Despite the overwhelming odds, their spirit could not be broken. Even when it seemed like there was no hope left, they fought back with everything they had. But the aliens only saw them as a joke. One of the human soldiers, a man named Marcus, stood alone, staring up at the sky. His eyes were filled with a fire that none of the aliens could understand. They watched him carefully, amused by his bravery. What did he think he could do? A single human soldier, surrounded by impossible odds. Alien leader, what are you waiting for, human? Come and face your inevitable death. We'll make sure it's quick. Marcus didn't respond. He had been through countless battles before, but this felt different. The odds were too great, but deep down, he knew something the aliens didn't. He turned his back on the aliens and began walking toward the wreckage of a long-forgotten ship lying on the outskirts of the battlefield. It was an old, abandoned vessel, broken and rusted, left behind by those who had once fought before him. The aliens didn't think twice about it. They laughed at his retreat. Alien soldier. Ha! Does he think there's some sort of magic waiting for him in that wreckage? Fool. The leader's laughter was the loudest. Go ahead, human. Hide in the debris. You'll never escape your fate. But Marcus wasn't hiding. He wasn't retreating. He was searching for something they would never expect. As he approached the wreckage, his mind raced. He had heard stories of a weapon so old, so powerful, that it had been forgotten by time. Could it be real? Was it buried beneath the broken ship's remains, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it? He knelt beside the wreckage, digging through the dirt and metal. His hands were covered in grease and dust, but he didn't stop. He could feel his heartbeat racing. He had to find it. There was no other choice. The aliens continued to watch from above, growing impatient. They thought he was a fool. The human is lost. The alien leader said, let him waste his time. It will make his inevitable end all the more satisfying. Marcus didn't hear them. He was too focused. And then, just as the aliens began to lose interest, his hand brushed against something solid. His eyes widened as he felt the cold, smooth surface of what could only be one thing: a weapon. A weapon that had been buried for centuries. His heart skipped a beat as he pulled it free from the wreckage. The metal gleamed in the light of the alien ships, its design alien to him, but it hummed with an energy he could feel deep in his bones. It was heavier than anything he had ever held before. This wasn't just any weapon. It was ancient, powerful, and something told him it would change everything. The aliens, now curious, watched as Marcus stood, holding the weapon in his hands. The mockery in their eyes faded, replaced by something else, a sense of uncertainty. The leader of the aliens leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Alien leader, what is that? What has he found? The laughter stopped. The aliens were no longer amused. The one thing they hadn't expected was now in the hands of a human. And for the first time, the aliens felt a strange twinge of fear. Could this human actually stand a chance? Marcus looked up, his eyes filled with determination. He didn't need their approval. He didn't need their laughter. He had a weapon now, and he was ready to show them what humanity was truly capable of. Suspense. As the camera zooms in on Marcus holding the weapon, the audience is left wondering, what is this weapon? Will it be enough to turn the tide of battle? Marcus stood frozen for a moment, gripping the strange weapon in his hands. He could feel the weight of it, as if it held the weight of humanity's hopes and dreams. The aliens, high above in their hovering ships, were no longer laughing. Their mocking gazes had turned to one of curiosity, something they hadn't shown before. They had never expected a human to find such a thing. The alien leader, a towering figure with pale skin and cold red eyes, leaned forward in his command chair. His voice, deep and metallic, echoed through the comm system. Alien leader, what have you found, human? What makes you think that weapon can save you? Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't afford to answer. Every part of him was focused on the weapon in his hands. It looked ancient, worn down by time, but there was something undeniable about it. The energy it gave off felt alive. His fingers brushed against the markings etched into the metal. The language was unfamiliar, but somehow he felt he could understand its meaning. The weapon hummed. It was a sound like nothing he had ever heard, a deep vibration that echoed through his very bones. Marcus tightened his grip on the handle, and for the first time since this battle began, he felt a sense of control. Marcus, thinking, this is it. This is the edge we need. The aliens, still watching from above, began to stir. The once steady confidence in their voices began to waver, replaced by uncertainty. Alien soldier, is that weapon from our time? How could a human have it? The alien leader snapped his attention to the soldier. Alien leader, enough of this. It doesn't matter what he has. He's only one human, and he's surrounded by us. The weapon is meaningless, but we need to know what it is. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Marcus took a deep breath. His fingers itched to pull the trigger, but he knew he had to be smart. He had only one chance, one shot. He focused on the weapon's power. The humming grew louder. The energy was building, gathering strength, as if the weapon itself was alive, feeding off the planet's very core. He could feel the charge in the air, like static electricity before a storm. The aliens saw the change. They saw the way the weapon's power was growing, and a ripple of panic spread across their ranks. Alien leader, commanding, fire, stop him before it's too late. But it was too late. Marcus had already made his move. With a swift motion, he pulled the trigger. A deafening roar erupted from the weapon, shaking the ground beneath him. The blast was like nothing the aliens had ever seen. A beam of pure energy shot out, streaking through the sky like a comet. It wasn't just a weapon. It was destruction incarnate. The aliens, who had once thought of themselves as the pinnacle of power in the galaxy, were now scrambling. The blast cut through their ships with ease, tearing through the thick hulls like paper. Sparks flew, and entire sections of the alien fleet began to break apart midair. Alien soldier, panicking. What is this power? How can one human have this? The leader stood in stunned silence. His red eyes widened in disbelief. His fleet was falling apart before his very eyes, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The weapon, so simple yet so powerful, was turning the tide of the battle. But Marcus wasn't done. He aimed again, his heart pounding in his chest. He had the advantage now, and he wouldn't waste it. He could feel the weapon's energy coursing through him, as if it was feeding on his adrenaline, his fear, his hope. The second shot was even more powerful. It sliced through the air like a blade, tearing apart the remaining ships with terrifying precision. The alien leader's flagship began to shake violently as the energy beam pierced its protective shields. Alien leader, shouting, "Retreat! Fall back! All ships, fall back!" But it was too late. The alien ships were already too damaged to escape. The humans, once seen as weak and helpless, were now fighting back with the might of an ancient weapon that even the aliens couldn't comprehend. As the last of the alien fleet fell from the sky, Marcus lowered the weapon. His body was trembling from the exertion, but a sense of triumph washed over him. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, humanity had gained the upper hand. He looked up at the sky, at the wreckage of the alien ships now scattered across the landscape, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel hope. But deep down, Marcus knew this wasn't the end. The aliens wouldn't give up so easily. They would return, stronger than ever. And the true test of humanity's strength was still to come. Suspense. As Marcus stands amid the ruins, his heart still racing, he wonders, is this victory truly the beginning of something greater? Or is it just the calm before the storm? Marcus felt the weight of victory for only a moment. The destruction of the alien fleet had given humanity a small glimmer of hope, but deep down, he knew this wasn't over. As the smoke from the wreckage settled, and the once pristine sky turned dark with the remnants of the alien ships, a deep unease began to settle in. The ancient weapon still hummed in his hands, its energy crackling faintly, almost as if it was alive, waiting. Marcus's heart beat loudly in his chest as he slowly walked toward the wreckage, each step heavier than the last. He could feel the eyes of his comrades on him, their silent awe still hanging in the air. Soldier 1. What just happened? Soldier 2. I thought they were invincible. How could we do that? Marcus turned toward them, his voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside him. Marcus, we didn't do this alone. That weapon, it's more than just a weapon. It's a force we don't yet understand. We've won a battle, but the war, it's far from over. His words hung in the air, but no one dared challenge them. He had just proved that humanity wasn't weak. The alien forces had underestimated them. And now the balance had shifted. The aliens had retreated for now, but Marcus's gut told him that they would return, stronger and more determined. As night fell, a strange silence took over the battlefield. The distant sounds of the wrecked ship's alarms had long since stopped, and only the crackling of the weapon's energy remained. The humans celebrated the small victory, but Marcus stayed on edge. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Marcus, thinking, they'll be back. They won't give up so easily. Then it happened. A deep, guttural rumble broke the silence. At first, Marcus thought it was just the aftershocks of the battle, but then the ground began to shake. Something was coming. Something big. The air seemed to thicken, charged with the tension of an incoming storm. In the distance, an eerie, flickering light appeared in the sky, growing larger and brighter with each passing second. The sound of engines, low and menacing, filled the air. Marcus's eyes widened. He knew that sound all too well. It was the sound of alien ships, hundreds of them. Soldier 1 panicked. They're back. How are they coming so quickly? The ground shook harder now, and Marcus could hear the unmistakable sounds of ships descending from the clouds, their massive forms breaking through the atmosphere. The enemy wasn't just returning. They were bringing everything they had. The humans, for the first time, felt a true wave of fear. Marcus, calm but determined, get to the bunkers. Protect the weapon. We fight, no matter what. But even as he spoke, Marcus felt a sense of dread settle in his stomach. The weapon had done its job, but what now? The aliens had never seen a human use such a weapon before, and they couldn't have been happy about it. It was clear that they had underestimated humanity, and now they were preparing to crush it for good. In the distance, Marcus saw the alien ships hovering above the remnants of the city, their lights glowing ominously. This time, they weren't retreating. They were here to finish what they started. Marcus's mind raced as he moved quickly to gather his team. They were vastly outnumbered, and while the weapon had given them a brief edge, there was no way it could stand against the full force of the alien fleet. He couldn't let them take it, though. He had to protect humanity's last hope. Alien leader, through a loudspeaker, echoing across the battlefield. Human, you are nothing but insects. You dare to challenge us. We will make an example of you. Surrender or face annihilation. Marcus stood tall, gripping the weapon tightly. The alien leader's words were a threat, but Marcus's resolve was ironclad. Marcus, shouting, "We don't surrender. We never surrender." But deep down, Marcus knew it wasn't going to be that simple. The aliens had learned from their mistakes. They were ready for the weapon, and they would adapt. He could feel the shifting tides of battle, the rising tension, as the first of the alien ships began to fire upon the city's defenses. Suspense, as Marcus led his team to the front lines, ready for whatever the aliens had planned. The question remained, what more did the aliens have in store? And could humanity truly win this war? Or was it just the calm before the storm? The first blast hit the city before Marcus even saw it coming. The air vibrated with the force of the explosion, a massive shockwave that sent soldiers and civilians alike tumbling to the ground. Buildings that had stood for centuries crumbled in an instant. Their structures turned to dust as the aliens unleashed their fury from above. Marcus, shouting, "Take cover. Fall back to the underground shelters." Now, panic set in. Humans were scrambling for safety, some still unsure of what was happening. The air was thick with smoke, and the once bright skies were now clouded with the fumes of destruction. The roar of the alien ships grew louder with each passing second, and Marcus's mind raced. He had to find a way to fight back. He couldn't let them destroy everything. Soldier 1, panicking. "We're outmatched. There's no way we can survive this." Marcus, gritting his teeth, "We fight because we have no choice. Keep your heads down and stay together." As he shouted commands, Marcus's thoughts turned to the ancient weapon. It had worked before. Could it work again? Or was it just a temporary fluke, a brief moment of triumph before the aliens came in force? He glanced at the weapon in his hands, its dark energy pulsing ominously. Was it truly humanity's salvation? Or was it just another tool to ensure their extinction? The ground trembled beneath their feet as more alien ships descended, their massive frames blotting out the sky. Marcus clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of the situation. The humans had been victorious once, but now they were facing the full might of the alien fleet. Their only advantage, the ancient weapon, was a mystery, and Marcus wasn't sure how long it would last. In the distance, he saw a massive alien ship, its design unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was larger than anything the humans had fought before, its dark hull reflecting the chaos of the battle below. The enemy was preparing for their final assault. Marcus, under his breath, "They've learned. They've adapted." With a heavy heart, Marcus ordered the retreat. The remaining soldiers made their way underground, some of them injured, others exhausted from the battle. The chaos above was deafening, but Marcus kept his focus. He had to keep them alive, keep them fighting. The underground shelters were filled to capacity, soldiers and civilians crammed together in the dimly lit corridors. There was no room to move, and every breath felt like it could be their last. Yet in the silence that followed the bombings, Marcus could feel the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. He looked at the team around him, people who had fought, bled, and lost so much, and knew he couldn't let them down. Not now. Not when they were so close to losing everything. But in the silence, as he tried to formulate their next move, a new sound caught his attention. A faint hum. It was soft at first, barely audible over the chaos, but it grew louder as time passed. It was the same hum he had heard when the weapon activated for the first time. Marcus, whispering, "It's the weapon." He ran toward the source of the sound, hoping against hope that the weapon could do what it had done before. It was their only chance. As he reached the vault where the weapon was stored, he froze. The ancient energy source had begun to pulse more intensely. The walls seemed to vibrate, as if the weapon itself was reacting to the imminent threat. The hum grew louder, and Marcus stepped forward. Was it reacting to the alien ships? Was it drawing power from something in the atmosphere? He wasn't sure, but he could feel it. This weapon, this mysterious force, held more power than he had ever imagined. Marcus, thinking, it's time to use it again. But this time, we'll need more than just luck. Suspense. With the aliens closing in and their forces growing stronger by the minute, Marcus had no choice but to rely on the ancient weapon once more. But the question lingered, what kind of weapon was this really? Could it truly stand up to the full force of the alien fleet? Or would this final attempt lead humanity straight into the jaws of defeat? Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he stood in front of the ancient weapon, its energy now coursing through the chamber. The air was thick with tension. He had no time to waste, and every moment felt like an eternity. The weapon hummed louder, its power growing, resonating with an unseen force that seemed to reach into the very fabric of reality itself. He could feel the power vibrating through his bones. This was no ordinary weapon. It wasn't something that could be wielded by just anyone. The weapon seemed to choose its wielder, connecting with Marcus on a deeper, almost instinctual level. It called to him. Marcus, whispering, "What are you?" He placed his hands on the surface of the weapon, and immediately, the room around him seemed to distort. The air crackled with energy, and for a brief moment, the entire chamber seemed to warp and shift. A deep, resonant voice echoed in his mind. He couldn't tell if it was his own thoughts or if the weapon itself was communicating. Weapon, in Marcus's mind. You are ready. Release me. For a split second, Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure what would happen if he did. The weapon was alien, ancient, and powerful beyond comprehension. But the urgency of the situation left him with no choice. If he didn't act now, humanity might not survive. The alien forces were closing in, and they had shown no mercy. They would annihilate everything if given the chance. Marcus closed his eyes, steeling himself. With a deep breath, he activated the weapon. Marcus, thinking, here goes nothing. The ground shook as the weapon roared to life. A blast of searing light erupted from it, tearing through the air like a shockwave. The walls of the chamber cracked under the immense pressure, and Marcus felt his body tremble as the energy surged through him. It was as if the weapon was alive, and it was channeling a force far beyond anything Marcus had ever encountered. He opened his eyes, and what he saw was nothing short of incredible. The weapon had opened a rift in the fabric of space itself, a swirling vortex of light and energy that seemed to pulse with life. The rift stretched into infinity, its edges crackling with energy. For a moment, Marcus thought he could hear the distant hum of alien ships. They were closing in on Earth, preparing for the final assault. But now, with the weapon's power, humanity had a chance to fight back. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a bridge, a conduit to something far greater. And Marcus was about to use it. Marcus shouting to his team, "Get ready. This is our chance." The soldiers, who had been waiting anxiously in the shadows, emerged from their positions, eyes wide with disbelief. They could see the rift opening in front of them, the energy swirling like a storm. It wasn't just the weapon that had awakened, it was the potential for an entirely new battle. The rift pulsed again, and then, from within its depths, came something unexpected. A figure stepped through the rift, massive and imposing. It was an alien, different from the ones that had been attacking, but it was clear this was no enemy. This figure was a warrior, and it was here to help. Soldier 2, astonished. What? Who is that? The warrior, towering over the humans, turned its gaze toward Marcus. Its eyes glowed with an ancient wisdom, and its armor was like nothing humanity had seen before. It was a warrior from another time, another place, one who had been drawn to the rift by the weapon's power. Warrior, in a deep, echoing voice, I am here to assist you, human. The weapon has chosen you. Together, we can push back the invaders. Marcus's eyes widened. This was no mere coincidence. The weapon had not only given them a chance, it had called forth an ally, a being from another realm who was now ready to fight alongside humanity. The weapon had truly awakened something incredible, but with the alien forces still closing in, would this mysterious ally be enough to turn the tide? Suspense. With the weapon now fully awakened and the mysterious warrior by his side, Marcus was faced with an overwhelming question. Could they truly use this newfound power to push back the alien invasion? Or had they unleashed something even more dangerous by tapping into forces beyond their control? The stakes were higher than ever, and time was running out. The room still echoed with the reverberations of the weapon's power as the rift shimmered in front of Marcus and his team. The alien warrior stood beside him, towering like an ancient sentinel, radiating a strange otherworldly aura. His dark armor, etched with symbols that no human had ever seen, seemed to absorb the surrounding light, casting the space in eerie shadows. Every inch of the warrior's body screamed of experience and combat. This was no mere alien. This was a being forged in the fires of war. Marcus swallowed his uncertainty. For a brief moment, he felt out of his depth. The alien warrior had appeared so suddenly, and he still wasn't sure if they could trust him. Could this alien truly help them? Or was there a hidden agenda? The weapon's power hummed, and Marcus's doubts were overshadowed by the realization that humanity's survival depended on their next move. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. A crackling sound filled the space as Marcus and the others made their way toward the rift. The strange energy had begun to pulse again, more intensely than before. It wasn't just the weapon. It was the war that was about to unfold. Marcus, thinking to himself, there's no turning back now. We have to fight. Ready, soldier? The voice of his commander, Captain Tanaka, broke through Marcus's thoughts. The seasoned soldier had seen more combat than most, but even he looked uneasy at the sight of the rift and the massive alien warrior. Marcus, nodding, I think we are. But we can't just stand here. The invaders are coming. With a nod, Tanaka motioned for the team to follow. The soldiers, a mix of human and now an alien warrior, moved toward the rift, their weapons raised and their eyes alert. The rift itself had begun to stabilize, creating a stable portal to the unknown world beyond. No one knew what they would find on the other side, but the enemy forces were closing in fast. If they didn't act now, humanity's chance for survival could slip away. The alien warrior stepped forward first, his massive frame almost taking up the entire doorway. He didn't look back. His eyes were locked onto the horizon beyond. It was as if he had done this many times before. Alien warrior, without turning, stay close. The battlefield awaits. Marcus's team exchanged glances before following. They stepped through the rift, entering a new world, one that felt ancient and wild. They were standing on the edge of a dark, war-torn landscape, with jagged mountains in the distance and thick, swirling clouds overhead. It was a place untouched by civilization, but it was a battlefield all the same. Before they could process their surroundings, the sound of engines roaring broke through the air. The enemy ships had arrived. They were not human. They were something far worse. Massive ships shaped like sleek, metallic predators tore through the atmosphere, their weaponry already charging. Marcus's heart raced, adrenaline flooding his body as his training kicked in. He quickly assessed the situation, his mind racing. The alien warriors had long since perfected the art of war, but this would be their first real test together. The enemy wasn't just any invading force. They were ruthless, relentless, and they had a seemingly endless army. Marcus wasn't sure if they could withstand the assault. Captain Tanaka, shouting, "Everyone, spread out. Find cover." The soldiers sprinted in different directions, ducking behind rocky outcroppings and seeking shelter. The alien warrior moved with them, his large frame seemingly unhindered by the obstacles. His movements were swift and calculated, as if he had been fighting these invaders for centuries. Marcus's heart raced as he found his own cover. His rifle was gripped tightly in his hands, but he knew that firepower alone wouldn't win this battle. It would take more than guns to defeat an enemy that had already proven they could wipe out entire worlds. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The enemy ships had launched their first wave of troops, armored soldiers, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. They marched in unison, a terrifying sight as they advanced towards Marcus's position. Marcus, under his breath, "This is it." The first shots rang out, the sound of rapid gunfire and exploding shells filling the air. Marcus fired, the recoil of his rifle kicking back against his shoulder. The enemy soldiers advanced, their laser rifles cutting through the air with deadly precision. But Marcus and his team weren't alone anymore. The alien warrior stepped forward, his massive sword drawn, glowing with a strange, unearthly energy. With a single swing, he cleaved through the enemy forces, his weapon cutting through their armor like it was paper. Alien warrior, roaring, for the survival of all. The force of the blow sent shockwaves through the ground, sending the enemy soldiers flying. Marcus and his team watched in awe as the alien warrior carved through the invaders like they were nothing more than mere obstacles. But it wasn't enough. The enemy was relentless, and more troops were emerging from the ships, their numbers growing by the second. The battle was far from over. It had only just begun. Suspense. As the battle raged on, Marcus's team found themselves caught between the overwhelming force of the invaders and the mysterious power of their alien ally. The question loomed in Marcus's mind. Would the weapon's power be enough to tip the scales, or were they about to face an even greater threat than they could handle? The battlefield was chaos. The air crackled with energy as weapons fired. Explosions rocked the ground, and the screams of soldiers echoed through the war-torn land. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing as he fought alongside the alien warrior, whose every strike was a thing of myth. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming, but they weren't backing down. The humans and their alien ally were holding the line, but for how long? Marcus, shouting to his team, "We can't hold them forever. We need that weapon. Now." The rift shimmered in the distance, still unstable but close enough to be their salvation. If they could reach it, if they could harness the full power of the weapon, maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide of this war. But the enemy was relentless. Alien soldiers surged forward, their weapons blazing, their heavy boots thundering against the ground. Marcus fired his rifle with practiced precision, but his hands were beginning to shake. The alien warrior beside him was a blur of motion, his massive sword cutting down enemies left and right, but even he was starting to show signs of fatigue. Alien warrior, gritting his teeth, "This is not the end." The alien's voice held a fierce resolve. It was clear that they had fought many battles before, but this one was different. This battle was humanity's first real taste of war against an enemy that showed no mercy. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of their world hung in the balance, and Marcus knew they couldn't afford to fail. As the alien warrior swung his sword again, cutting down 3 enemy soldiers in one sweep, Marcus spotted something in the distance. It was the weapon, the ancient artifact that had so far been their only hope of winning this war. The rift was beginning to pulse with more intensity. If they could just get to it. Suddenly, a piercing shriek filled the air. A massive alien warship descended from the skies, its engines glowing like fiery suns. It loomed over the battlefield, casting a shadow so large that it felt like the sky itself had turned dark. From the belly of the ship, more soldiers poured out, warriors wearing armor that seemed to shimmer with an eerie dark light. Marcus, breathing heavily, "This is it. We either win or die trying." His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried with it the weight of what they had all come to accept. There was no retreat. There was no turning back. It was either victory or death. The alien warrior stepped forward, his sword glowing brighter than ever, and locked eyes with Marcus. Alien warrior, this is why we fight. Without another word, the alien warrior charged forward, his sword slashing through the enemy lines with deadly precision. Marcus didn't hesitate. He and his team followed, their rifles raised, determined to protect their ally and their world. They reached the rift's pulse, the weapon's power filling the air with an electric charge. Marcus, gripping his weapon. Let's end this. The energy from the weapon surged around them, and the rift began to crack and splinter. The sky above them shimmered with strange, unearthly light. A deep, rumbling roar sounded from the warship above them as it began to shift in the atmosphere, as if preparing for something even worse. The invaders had realized what was happening. They knew they couldn't let the humans harness the weapon's power. But it was too late. Marcus and his team, aided by the alien warrior, pushed forward into the heart of the rift, the weapon's energy now crackling and shooting through the air like an unstoppable force. A bright flash of light filled the battlefield, and in an instant, the weapon's true power was unleashed. The weapon's pulse shot through the air, tearing through the enemy's warship with such force that it exploded in midair, sending debris raining down like a fiery storm. The invaders, caught off guard, were thrown into disarray. The remaining enemy soldiers were quickly overwhelmed by the onslaught of energy, their armor no match for the weapon's devastating power. Captain Tanaka, shouting with relief, "We did it. We actually did it." But even as the battle began to turn in their favor, Marcus knew that this victory wasn't just about the weapon. It was about the courage and unity that humanity had shown. They had fought not just for survival, but for the chance to protect their world, their future, and each other. With the help of their alien ally, they had turned the tide, but it was their determination that had made the real difference. The enemy forces were in full retreat now, their warships scattered in every direction. The battlefield was silent for a moment, save for the heavy breaths of the soldiers. They had won, but the cost had been great. They had lost comrades, they had fought on an alien world, and they had seen horrors no one should ever face. Marcus stood at the heart of the battlefield, his rifle still gripped tightly in his hands, and watched as the alien warrior approached him once again. This time, there was no mocking or derision. There was only respect, something that Marcus had earned through the very battle they had just fought. Alien warrior, with a bow of respect, you have proven your strength, human. Today, you have earned your place among us. Marcus nodded, the weight of the alien warrior's words settling in his chest. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And for the first time, Marcus felt that humanity had found a place in the vast universe, a place where they could fight, survive, and stand proud. Suspense. As the last of the enemy ships disappeared into the horizon, Marcus couldn't help but wonder, what would happen next? The universe was vast, and this battle had only been a small part of something much bigger. What other dangers lurked in the depths of space? What other allies or enemies would humanity encounter next? The story of humanity's rise had just begun.